Hey there, Fletcher from All Things Overlanding here, and today I'm going to be doing a long-term update, a 25,000 plus mile update on my 2023 Nissan Frontier Pro-4X. I'm going to talk about everything from the rear diff and whether it's leaking to my brakes and how those are doing. So I'm going to try and focus on the OEM stuff on this. I'm not going to talk so much about my modifications. I will put out another video that's going to be talking about the overlanding modifications I've made since my last update about a year ago, because I've changed a ton of things on this truck and there's more coming. But again, in this video, I am purely going to talk about the truck itself. So whether you are looking at buying a brand new stock one, if you are looking at buying a used stock one, and you just have questions about what to be concerned about and how these things hold up after a number of miles and a couple of years of heavy use. I've done a ton of off-roading in this thing, as you can see. So I'm going to be giving you all that information in this video about how the truck is holding up and any issues or concerns that you may want to be aware of. So if you want to hear more about the 25,000 plus mile update on my 23 Frontier, stay tuned.
Where it came from, but you got it, my got it. It began in the land of the sandstorm. I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
All right, guys, so as I mentioned in the intro today, I'm going to be talking about my 2023 Frontier Pro-4X and kind of giving you updates from like an OEM standpoint as far as, you know, any issues that I've had, or how are the brakes holding up? How's the rear diff holding up, right? How's the transmission? Some people had complaints about that. So again, I'm going to keep it mostly OEM focused in this video. You're going to notice my star length there, and, you know, I've got a Z1 assault bumper, and I just added some new wheels and tires to it. So I'll put a card up here in the top right corner to the updated Overlanding build walk around that I just did on this truck too. But in this video, I'm not going to talk a ton about the modifications. I will talk a tiny bit about like the roof rack, because I know I get a million questions about that every day. Has it hurt my paint? You know, does it cause leaking through the seals, that kind of stuff. So I'll touch on that a tiny bit, but for the most part, I'm going to try and focus on like problems and concerns that people have had. So let's start by talking about the one time that I had it into the dealership, and that was for the transmission flash. That is the only time that this truck has seen a dealership. I do all my own work to it. I've done all my own oil changes and things like that. I did have to take it in, though, to get the flash done. If you have a 2022 or a 2023 Frontier that has not been to the dealership, and the transmission, you know, in cruise control specifically, it revs up and, you know, goes crazy, take it to the dealership. They have a TSB. I will try and link it in the description down below, a technical service bulletin, that if you give them that number, it should be covered under warranty. And they basically just took it up to a computer and they flash your transmission. And since they did that, this thing has driven like a beautiful brand new truck. No issues whatsoever, no over revving or crazy stuff like that. It drove just how you would expect it to drive, and it's been fantastic. So as far as any issues that I've had, there is one that I haven't really talked about before that I've kind of experienced since I've done a few of my own oil changes, and that is with the stock skid plate down here. So one thing that kind of sucks is there are 4 bolts, 14 millimeter bolts that hold this skid plate on back there in the back, and they are a pain in the butt. And somehow I managed to thread one, and I've seen multiple people talking about this where, you know, it's just like there's just like a nut welded up into the part above the skid there that those bolts go into. And, you know, when you're taking them off and putting them back on and taking them off and putting them back on every time you do an oil change, it just so happened that I put one up in there and I tightened it down, and it seems to have threaded out. So now I'm basically running 3 bolts on that, and that's really annoying to me, because if you can't take the bolts in and out without having to worry about threading them, then that's kind of annoying. Now, that could be user error, but I mean, I've done this a number of times. I'm not exactly new to, you know, removing or adding skid plates or doing anything like that. So, I mean, I finger tightened it. I thought I was good, and then I torqued it down, and the next time I took it off, it wouldn't go back in. It was basically being a pain in the butt. So again, just be really careful with your skid plate. If you're taking that off, if you're doing your own oil changes or something like that, you want to be really careful of those bolts up under there. You can see the one that's missing there. That one's threaded. On the other side, I've still got the 2. But so just be really aware of that if you're going to be taking that off, if you're going to be doing your own oil changes, that can be kind of a pain in the butt. So just wanted to give you a heads up there. So we've talked transmission, we've talked about the skid plate. Again, I mentioned that I'm going to talk a tiny bit about, this is the T-Laps TLAPS cab rack. This thing's only a couple $100. It's very inexpensive. A lot of people said, you know, hey, this padding is going to come off. I've probably had this on here for about 10 months now. I don't have any damage to my paint. I don't have any problems with like any of the rubber coming off or anything like that. No damage to the paint or anything. It's been totally fine. So I'm very happy with it for the money. I do get some rattles at different speeds, which is annoying. So I'm trying to solve some of those. I know I saw somebody else that they basically took some of these crossbars and then they drilled some new holes beside this front wind fascia piece, because that seems to be where the rattles come from, and then they basically just strengthened it by putting some bars behind it. So that is an idea. I haven't done that yet. I've just kind of gotten used to the rattling, but you know, no issues with paint or anything like that where this thing mounts up. The same can be said for these sort of like channels. So I know I've seen a ton of people that have said, hey, my paint is flaking or chipping or whatever on the sort of these like drip channels up here on top of the truck. I don't have any of that. So I don't know if I'm just lucky or what, but that is something to check. If you are, again, buying one of these used, just go up here and check these little sort of channels and make sure that the paint isn't chipping, because some people have had problems with that, but I have not had any problems with that. As far as brakes go, so again, I have 25,400 miles on it. It's a truck, so for me, it's not a sports car. I'm not, you know, gunning it from every stoplight. I'm not jamming on the brakes. I basically drive it like an old man. Plus, I've got all this extra weight in here between the drawers and the fridge and just all my gear and the rooftop tent. I probably got about 12 to 1,300 pounds worth of gear that's constantly 24/7 in the back of this truck. So I basically just drive it like an old man, but I'm still on the original OEM brakes and rotors. No warping. Still, the brakes just feel like they did when I got the truck. I have no concerns, no issues. I think I'll probably get, I mean, I'm hoping to get 35 to 40,000 miles out of them before I have to replace them. But again, at 25,000 plus miles, I don't have any problems with the brakes. I've talked to people that are like, I've replaced them twice by 20,000 miles. And I don't know if that's just driving or what, but I have not had those issues. The one thing that I am a little concerned about, and not really concerned, but just annoyed by, and a lot of us have talked about this, is the rear diff weeping. So as you can see up in here, probably, you can kind of see just how moist that is all down around the bottom. So I've definitely got a fair amount of diff weep. Again, with 25,000 miles, you're supposed to check it and drain it and refill it at 30,000. I'll probably do it sooner than that now that it's warming up here in the Midwest. In the next month or so, I'm probably just going to pull that cover off, maybe upgrade to an ARB from Z1. I'll put a link in the description down below to that if it helps you. But I'm probably just going to do their upgrade kit with a lube locker gasket, and that should solve the problem. But so yeah, it's not something that you want to see on a new truck. But unfortunately, with these M226 rear axles, we've seen it a lot on these third gens. Pretty much all of them seem to have some level of weeping or, you know, slight leaking going on. Again, it's just more of an annoyance than anything else, but it is something to be aware of. It's something to check if you're looking at buying one of these trucks, or if you own one of these trucks. Just do it the right way, pull it off. Even if you put the stock cover back on, I'm only upgrading to the ARB because I do off-road a fair amount, so I want to have that extra protection. It's a little bit better built diff cover. Obviously, these things are cheap. That's part of why they leak. So anyway, so I will be upgrading to the ARB from Z1 and doing a lube locker gasket and all new fluid here in the next couple thousand miles probably. So other than that though, I mean, as you can see, I do not baby this truck, right? I've washed it maybe 3 or 4 times since I've owned it in the last 2 years, basically. I've got, you know, my wife put the ladder to my rooftop tent on the paint at one point, so she scraped through that. It's sort of hard to see, but I mean, I've got trail rash all down the side of this thing. I've got scratches and stuff in the paint. Again, I am not babying this truck. I am throwing rocks all over it, rock chipping everything, and being really hard on it. And again, 25,000 miles and 2 years later, it's still holding up nice. When you wash it, it still looks really nice. You can kind of see some of the trail rash a little bit, but for the most part, my paint has held up great. I've had no problems with it. I change my oil about every 5,000 miles. It recommends 7,500, but I just do it about every 5,000 or a little bit less if I can. And it just runs and runs and runs. It drives great. So I'm a huge fan of this truck. But I hope that when you consider something like this, that diff weeping and maybe having to spend a few $100 total to get a new diff, a lube locker gasket, and some new fluid to fix that one small problem with the truck, that shows you that otherwise this truck is a great value for the money. And I don't work for Nissan. I'm just saying this because I've owned multiple Nissans and they're so underrated. And to see people say like, oh, this thing has a weeping from the diff, you shouldn't buy it. That doesn't make any sense, right? You're going to save $10,000 plus off of a Toyota that's comparable with a NAV6 in it instead of a turbo 4-cylinder in the new ones, you know, or the old outdated 6-speed automatic in the old trucks. So anyways, hope that is good information for you, a good update as far as how things have been holding up. These are questions that I get from you guys all the time, so I just wanted to kind of touch on them really quick. All right, guys, so that will do it for the 25,000 mile sort of long-term, real quick update on my 23 Frontier. Again, I hope that kind of helps if you have concerns about these trucks, to show you that they're really bulletproof truck. Like they are really well-made trucks. There are some small concerns. The paint on the roof I can totally get. Again, I haven't had that issue, but I totally understand it sucks to have to take your truck in, have the whole thing stripped down, repainted, hope that that keeps. I've seen people that have had to do it a couple of times, and that's not ideal, and I totally get that. So again, if you were looking at buying one of these used or something, check those drip trays up on the rooftop. Make sure that you don't have any paint chipping or anything like that. Just check it to make sure that you're not getting one that could be problematic. Same with the rear diff. Not nearly as big of a deal, I think, as everybody says. Like people say, oh, it's weeping, your diff is screwed. That is not true. It just means that there is a slight weep, that some of that fluid is getting out. You do want to check it. You don't want to drive it for 80,000 miles and then be like, oh, there's no fluid in there, and now my diff is screwed. But again, to have to remove, what, 8 or 10 bolts, whatever it is, I think it's eight bolts on the rear diff cover, slap a new diff cover on it with a really good gasket, and then refill the fluid. Anybody, even if you're not mechanically inclined, anybody could do that job in your driveway. I've done it several times on different trucks that I've had. I've upgraded rear diffs, covers, and things like that. Z1 also has a diff protector, kind of like a skid that goes on the bottom of it, and I may get that as well just to kind of protect it. But again, between that ARB cover that's way stouter than the stock one, a good lube blocker gasket, and especially then if you add that extra protection because you off-road, you're going to be in really good shape, and you shouldn't really have to mess with this thing a whole lot, except maybe to drain it every 25 to 40,000 miles maybe, and just refill it with new fluid. So overall, this thing has been bulletproof. It's been all over the country. It's starts up every time. The remote start is great. I have the Pro-4X with every package except the leather and sunroof package, which includes HomeLink too, so I don't have HomeLink, the garage door opener. But again, aside from that, I remote start this thing all the time. The heated seats, the heated steering wheel are awesome. They're so comfortable. These third gen seats are comfortable. Like everything about the truck I just love. And these little piddly concerns, I haven't had any problems with them. So again, I hope that that gives you guys some confidence if you're looking at one of these trucks, or if you own one of these trucks, just to know that they're really great trucks for the money. So again, if that was helpful, make sure to click that subscribe button down below. I'm doing a ton of D41 third gen Frontier content. I also do a ton of like camping gear stuff, do-it-yourself modifications. I'm getting ready to redo my overlanding setup. So if you're into like camping or using the truck for like going outdoors and exploring, this would be a great channel for you, and I'd love to have you as a subscriber. So definitely consider clicking that subscribe button. Also below this video will be links to all my other social channels. So wherever you want to come hang out, I'd love to have you. There's also a link to my website where I've got funny overlanding camping themed patches and stickers, things like don't burn your wiener and it's a hot dog, or all things overlanding stickers and patches, or F people, let's go overlanding. So I've got all kinds of funny stuff on there. Also below this video is a join button, which is just kind of a passive way to support the channel, get you early access to the videos and some other perks. Or if you want a more involved way to be involved with all things overlanding, check out the Patreon link down below. We have a 24/7 Discord. We kind of chat about our rigs and our cars. We've got a couple of Frontier guys in there, which is a lot of fun. But so definitely check that out. And then of course, last but not least, there is a link to the Newbie Overlanders Facebook group. This is a group I run with over 22,000 people in it at the time I'm recording this, but it's different from the big groups because we don't allow bullying. The idea is to help each other, to ask questions, to learn from each other's setups, to see what other people are doing, and to learn more and get outside more, right? So if you want to be part of that, we'd love to have you there as well. But again, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.